is that what is going on? What is going on here in Tempe, Arizona? We got Coach Dillingham spraying his quarterback Sam Levitt with water, and why is he doing that? Well, we'll talk about that at the end or middle of the section. Let's talk about injuries to begin with from our homies over at CFB Nation. Virginia Tech interim head coach Philip Montgomery talks about his running back Terrian Stewart, who will be questionable this weekend against Georgia Tech. It's also why we're going Yellow Jackets in that game that we talked about earlier in the stream. He has a shoulder injury, as he has 301 yards for the Hokies. Not too bad, not too bad. And yeah, it should be somewhat of a big loss, I would say, for Tech going into the Tech game. Pete Nikos is updating us on some news that we talked about on Monday. Connor Weigman, who suffered a concussion against Texas Tech, looks to be somewhat cleared and is in full participation on practice here for Wednesday. So that's also why we're going Cougars over Oklahoma State there. Also, Pete Nikos, coming from Pete. I thought there was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. Trinidad Chavez slated to be the starter against Washington State, and I was like, well, why wouldn't he be the starter? Well, I guess Austin Simmons continued to get back to 100%. That's what Lane Kiffin said, or at least it was rephrased as that. And they're still evaluating his situation going forward. But I would still not start Simmons over Chad Bliss. He's been, not I don't want to say transforming this offense, but has found a gear or two to be added for the Rebels. I see he led that team against LSU and will continue to lead this team, I think, going forward. Maybe Lane Kiffin's kind of been in a band-aid on it somewhat. But there's some interesting news to talk about. Some other stuff that we previously mentioned on the stream in the Red River rivalry. Red River rivalry. Pete, with some more news from him. Brett Venables declined to share what his quarterback situation is in John Mateer with his injury and him being listed in the SEC injury report tonight. Recording here, or at least live on Wednesday. But yeah, this is some interesting news, as maybe that's also why the line dropped a little bit, because maybe him not being put on that list kind of changes people's mind. But again, it's his throwing hand. I don't think he's going to be 100% totally going into the weekend, and from what I've seen, his kind of injury and surgery procedure takes about 3 to 4 weeks. It's only been 3 weeks going into this week, so I don't think he's going to continue to be able to play in general. So pretty, again, eyebrow raising stuff there. But now back to Kenny Dillingham and why he's spraying his quarterback Sam Levitt. He's actually preparing his team going into Salt Lake City, as is expected to see some stormy conditions. Yeah, saw a map right before I went live. Hurricane Priscilla down south will be giving Tucson a nice soaking as our BYU comes to town, and we'll see if that affects the game this upcoming weekend. It'll be soaking Tucson, obviously. Salt Lake City should be seeing also some of the weather in, but Tucson for sure will be getting a little bit of rain, as the Wildcats, I believe, are hosting someone there. I can't remember off the top of my head, as we did all the games. Regardless, this hurricane might be affecting the game there in Salt Lake, as it technically is also late kickoff. One of the biggest news coming out today, also from the homies CFB Nations, North Carolina cornerback coach Armand Hawkins has been suspended for alleged NCAA rule violations. Apparently, he supplied a player's family member with sideline passes for a game. Not too sure exactly what has developed out of that, but it's kind of snowballed with this story now turning into North Carolina has held preliminary discussions about a Bill Belichick exit strategy. Yeah, Billy B maybe leaving Chapel Hill a little earlier than anticipated. This is kind of not surprising news. It hasn't been the best start. I would say Bill Belichick's time as a head coach, his first season always isn't a good start. When he was in Cleveland, he ended with a under 500 record. Also with the Patriots, his first season there in New England was under 500, but it was definitely changed the next season as he won the Super Bowl. So I think you got to give him some time to cook, get some players in that, kind of work better with his system, as it doesn't look like it's working out right now. Then on top of that, his son, Steve Belichick, would definitely want to stay to allow him to gain some more experience. Because I think eventually his son would have aspirations, to become a head coach himself. So I think he would want to stay there in Chapel Hill a little bit longer than anticipated. But there's been reports as well coming from Underdog NFL. This company actually hired out Bill Belichick last year and doing some content, some analysis from the old head ball coach when he departed New England. But Bill Belichick apparently has discussed a buyout option with North Carolina's hierarchy, per Ollie Collinley. It would be a $1 million buyout, which is kind of interesting because technically he's guaranteed, I think, around $10 million until 2029. So I don't know how that all works. Maybe he's taking the buyout to just get out of the situation. Just a lot of just weird things, as again, this story has been snowballing since, again, the coach being suspended for handing out sideline passes. The final story that we're going to be talking about here is coming out of Palo Alto. A massive donation. This, I guess, broke with Pete Thamel because he's with ESPN. Again, $50 million donation from a former player. I'm forgetting the player's name off the top of my head. He played back in the 60s. Accumulated a lot of dough. Has now put it into the program, which is well needed, but I don't think it's going to do much. I think Stanford and the standard that they have, the prerequisites just to get into a Cardinal uniform, is obviously going to be too high. And when you're dealing with players in other situations, we saw the Bachmeyer brothers both leave for greener pastures in Provo, Utah, as that happened this past off season. And then even mostly the fourth who left for Texas. We've seen other guys leave Stanford for better situations, which is, I think, pretty interesting. But we'll see again how it works out. I don't think this money is going to move the needle much because they kind of just need to either play ball or, to be quite honest with you, just move down to the FCS is where I think Stanford would be more successful. I think long term, they will not be in the ACC conference. And then even longer term, I think they eventually will move down, not get the invitation to the Big Ten either, them or Cal. I would think Cal would have a better chance at staying at the FBS, but I think long term Stanford maybe is better off joining the Ivy League conference, as they'll have the same kind of standard of educational requirements, with your Yales, your Harvards, your Princetons, and be a hell of a lot more competitive there versus what they are in at the moment. But that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. And so tonight, again, we got Missouri at Middle Tennessee. It is the start of a consecutive days with football, and that begins again tonight, which already kicked off. We have 49 days in a row, which I think is until like late November, of consistent football going on here. As also later tonight, we have Liberty at UTEP kicking off. And yep, that has been the news, guys.